Joining me now is Eric Glyman, CEO and co-founder of Ramp. Eric, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you and so
Great.
excited about the show.
So let's talk about this data, because this is why I sort of pinged you in the first place. I saw this chart and I said, this doesn't really reflect what the market's doing right now. It shows that AI adoption just dipped, especially in tech and finance. So what's behind that slowdown? What do you think? Is this a pause or is it just something bigger?
I think it's super interesting and definitely worth paying attention to. I mean, so first, just for folks who aren't familiar with the data set, this is looking across over 80 billion a year in spend across corporate and small business, as well as enterprise business card volume, as well as invoices. And so it's a pretty good look at a slice of what are businesses actually spending on. And when you look at this, this is also about adoption. This is the percent of companies out of the total customer base that are spending on any at least one AI-based tool. So these can be subscriptions like ChatGPT. This can be use of an API like the Claude Sonnet model, if you're pulling that, or a specific AI tool. And what's really fascinating about this is that for the first time, you're not seeing a net increase in the percentage of companies that are adopting this. To me, what this says is that obviously there's still very heavy use. Almost 1 out of 2 companies on Ramp are spending on these kind of tools, which is extraordinary given at the start of 2023. Maybe it was 1 in 20. At the same time, I think when you see heavy spikes like earlier this year, when there's a lot of adoption, I think a lot of people are saying, I tried it, it's not working for me.
Right.
Where is the value? And so that's the thing to watch out for.
Even what you just said is so interesting. I'll try it, but it's not working for me. I mean, when you talk to CEOs and founders, when they come on CNBC, they say it's just like a baseline now. You have to spend on this. And that's why this is so interesting. And maybe I wonder, is it indicative of something else? Could we see a further pullback? Because we've kind of been here before, right? Earlier on in the year, when we thought maybe some of this stuff was overhyped and investors wanted to see real ROI, return on investment.
Totally. Look, perhaps even that statement and that sentiment is what caused this huge spike and buildup. Teams are getting told by their boss, you better try this stuff. But at the same time, I think a lot of people started, subscribing to chatbots, but haven't quite figured out how to integrate it into their workflows. What I would say, though, that's worth noting, this chart is looking at percent of adoption. There's different data looking at intensity of spend. And even though you're seeing on net kind of a lull in new companies adopting, there are certainly companies that are spending more than ever. If you kind of flip that chart and look over at the specific model, there's one outlier from this data, and that's Anthropic. They have consistently seen more companies adopt it, and that business model is less about single users buying $20 subscriptions. This can be, companies that are running their entire infrastructure and inference loads through that, and that's going up. And so the companies that are integrating AI into their product are seeing different trends, is what I would call out.
So you're saying that basically companies are adopting Anthropic in a very big way. What are they maybe pulling back on? Can you see that? Is it copilots? Is it chatbots? Is it, what area?
You nailed it. It is exactly those 2 areas. It's these single subscriptions for users where people are trying a $20 a month, trying these models. Obviously, still huge usage, and that is the lion's share of adoption. But there's a large set of folks who haven't quite figured out. It's interesting, but all of the model capabilities. The thing that is working are some of the AI native products. These can be the Cursor is a very high flying one these days. As well as API usage. And so these are businesses that are calling these models and integrated into their products.
So you would think that would be the tech companies that are using them. But I want to get to another part of this chart because I find it so interesting. You have areas like manufacturing and healthcare, right, that you may not think are the earliest adopters, but their trajectory continues to rise. What's behind that?
So I actually think this is, for me, the very encouraging part. Which is to say, even in here, you wouldn't think, right, for manufacturing, even though they're definitely embracing automation, it's not necessarily the first place you would expect would be using AI. In already almost half of manufacturing companies are using it in some way. And even with healthcare, I would say an AI company would look at this and say, wow, there's so much market left for us to go into. I think that there's incredible leaders in the space in healthcare. There's customers like Abridge. They recently did a financing at a high multi-billion-dollar, single-digit multi-billion-dollar valuation, which kind of suggests, usage. This can be doctors who are, going and taking meeting with patients, and the notes are done and structured, on the doctor's behalf, so they can spend more time with patients instead of taking notes. And so I think that there's really interesting places where it's not necessarily the chatbot, but these applied products are emerging a little faster in these categories.
We had Shiv on, the CEO of Abridge, a few weeks ago on DB Live, and I was telling him too that even my doctor was showing me how she's leaning on different AI products, going back into primary care, which is, it is really remarkable what we're seeing in that space. I
Sure.
wonder, you mentioned Anthropic, right? At this point, Anthropic and OpenAI, they're kind of like the incumbents. I mean, we know that businesses, that enterprise consumers are using them and their APIs. What are you seeing in the startup space? You mentioned the true earlier stage. I don't even know if you can call it earlier stage, but the cursors, which you mentioned, the replits, some of these still up and coming AI native companies, are they gaining momentum, keeping momentum?
For the ones that are working, the momentum is unlike anything I think folks have ever seen. I mean, you look at a company like Cursor. We've been very familiar with the company for a long time. I believe Ramp may have been one of their first 10 customers. On the order of call it a year and a half ago. If the rumors are true and the reporting is true, supposedly their revenue is on the order of already $1 billion a year. And history doesn't have examples of companies that, a year and a half ago were a seed stage startup and now, is doing that order of revenue. Replit, the CEO, had talked about how they had crossed 100 million in revenue recently, I think with a 10x level of growth over the last year and a half. And to even others in the coding space, like a Cognition or a Devon, which are growing extremely quickly. So the fastest area of growth where you can see this very quickly in the startup space is certainly in the coding agents. But I would even draw attention to, even today at Ramp, we had a release around the first AI agents that are based in the product. And while that's not a single sold SKU, effectively it is allowing companies to augment areas of work where you might have had a person that was going and assessing, is this in policy or out of policy? Now you have agentic flows, computers that are able to discern and track out nuance and understand policies versus behaviors. And so what I would say, the other thing that's happening is many companies like Ramp are inserting these into their products and seeing very fast, or in certain cases, accelerated areas of growth. I think there is an argument to be made that at some point in the future, anyone that sells software will be selling AI, or won't have a business. And so I think that's the other trend that's happening.
You made the transition for me, Eric, because I did want to ask you about the AI agents, your own that you just launched today. Like on one side, what did you see in customer behavior and needs that told you it was time to build something in-house, right? And then, I mean, you guys are a fintech. To your point, every company is sort of becoming an AI company, but how do you make that transition? Who are you working with to build these agents?
For sure. I mean, this is one that we're super excited about, in part because, first, most people, when they think expenses, it is just like shuddering. It is like the worst part of
Terrible.
people's months. The worst hour you have to go and submit this stuff. It's horrible for employees, to have to go manually enter this data. And it's even worse for finance teams, people who've actually learned, spent time thinking deeply about numbers, banking, the performance of business. And yet a huge portion of their time goes down to being a glorified traffic cop, to try to say, is this coffee, what's the context around it? Why did you go to this dinner? And the fascinating thing, and what agents can really do, is when you look at new reasoning models, effectively they're able to take very complicated pieces of context that can be a company's expense policy, transaction data, metadata around the transaction, and start to automate what are the most complicated parts of really assessing and seeing, okay, is this transaction in policy? And for the early customers adopting it, we found that agents, we've made this in partnerships with OpenAI, using their latest reasoning models, the O3 model. These models are 99% accurate, so it can detect, frankly, more accurately than a human. People who are not, quite as detail oriented. Was this in or out of policy? For the 85 to 90% right now of transactions, just automatically approve it without needing to waste managers'
Right.
time on reviewing employee expenses. And then ultimately make policies better. A lot of policies are written in a sloppy way, and so it's this new type of software where I'd say finally computers are able to start to detect nuance the way that humans can to give people their time back.
Well, it's a great use case, and I look forward to hopefully having that spare me some pain of my expenses. Eric, so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining. We'll let you get back to it, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you.